welcome back to Listography. I'm Joe. I'm here with Kramzer and Jason. We are counting down the best albums of different years, and today we will be counting down the top 5 albums of 1969. Pretty good year, pretty nice year in music, really. You had a lot going on. You had Woodstock, you had Altamont, bands just exploding, an influx of new kind of talent, new bands, kind of inspired by whether it was, kind of the Beatles' ascension and takeover of America, whether it was the full kind of anti-war movement. You just had a whole lot of music happening in America at the time and across the world. You had, CCR released 3 albums in 1969. Led Zeppelin had 2 albums in 1969. You had The Who. You had Bob Dylan coming back. You had the Stones, Neil Young, Crosby, Stills and Nash, the band, The Who, Miles Davis doing some incredible stuff in kind of jazz, Jimi Hendrix, so much music, Woodstock, enormous gathering, upstate New York with Santana, CCR, Grateful Dead, Sly and the Family Stone, The Who, Janis Joplin, the band, Crosby, Stills, Nash, Jimi Hendrix, Joe Cocker, a lot of music going on in 1969. So let's get into it. There's probably a lot of choices to choose from here. I think I know some of your top picks, but see what you guys got.
I'll start. Just backing on what you're talking about, Woodstock. Santana is kind of the sleeper pick, that the artist that stole the show there, in a very different style of music. Does have an album out on 69, but this is such a loaded year that it's not even close to getting contention here. Very hard year for me. A lot of my all-time favorite artists with really good albums. Just not making the cut will be Let It Bleed and Everybody Knows This Nowhere by Neil Young. Can't get them in. My finalists are going to be Abbey Road by the Beatles. And then a trio of legendary folk albums. You've got Nashville Skyline by Bob Dylan, which is more country rock, but still that's folk writing elements. I'm also going with Clouds by Joni Mitchell, second year in a row for her. I think she's greatly underappreciated. And then I've got 5 Leaves Left by Nick Drake coming across the Atlantic. But runaway winner for me, because there's only one album on earth that I like more than this one, and it's going to be Tommy by The Who.
This is the first win and first nomination of The Who by Kramzer.
Not even close. I absolutely adore every single little microsecond of this record. It's a rock opera. It is incredibly ambitious. It's got all of the opera elements you want. It's even got an underture and an overture, and just everything is, I don't think I've ever heard a piece of music that is constructed and comprised the way this is. It is absolutely beautiful, but still rocks, with tracks like Pinball Wizard and I'm Free, really good melodic pop stuff on it, like with 1921. Daltrey sings on a lot of it. There's kind of different characters in it, and Townsend sings a little bit. I think the writing on this with Townsend is just beautiful. It's almost like I can see it being like a level of therapy for him. It's like a love letter to him kind of confronting some demons in his childhood and stuff like that. It is absolutely fantastic to have something this personal sound so big. Rock opera is the best way to describe it. The thing to me that sets it apart even higher than it should be regarded, maybe the best drum performance on an album I've ever heard with Keith Moon throughout. He is just on fire here. He's his own brand that cannot be imitated, and he puts these little accents and punctuation on things, plays some weird times, and it's just fantastic. It's also kind of a tribute to Entwistle. Like, how do you play with Keith Moon and make it sound that good? It's so unpredictable, but everything about this album works for me. It is absolutely fantastic. So this is a loaded year. I didn't even mention any Zeppelin album, and those are great too, but Tommy is by far better than all of these.
All right. So 69 for me, there's 4 records that are easy locks in my mind as favorite albums of mine. Filling that 5th spot was a nightmare for me. I went through so many different options or things that it could have been, and trying to listen to them side by side and listen to a couple tracks from one and go to the other one, and man, it was rough. In the end, I'm going with a record that I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for, because I'm passing over. I mean, it's inevitable that you're going to pass over a lot of great albums, but this is one that doesn't get mentioned almost ever in the same breath as records like Zeppelin 1, 2, Tommy, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Doesn't get that kind of respect generally, I don't think. So maybe people might think this is a crazy pick on my part. But when I listen to them side by side, I just really like the songs on this record a lot. I'm going with Canned Wheat by the Guess Who. I love No Time. It's not the single version that became famous, but it's got an early version of No Time on it. It's got Laughing, it's got Undone, and all the deep cuts are really good as well. I think it's really underrated. I love Burton Cummings as a singer. I think he's very soulful and underrated. So Canned Wheat, number 5. My other runners up are going to be the band self-titled album, sometimes known as the Brown Album. In 68, I couldn't squeeze Sweetheart of the Rodeo onto my list, and it broke my heart. So I'm going with slightly even better early country rock album, I think. The Gilded Palace of Sin by the Flying Burrito Brothers. I also have Nashville Skyline by Bob Dylan. And of course, number 1, Abbey Road.
This is the 4th win and 7th nomination of the Beatles by Jason.
I promise my picks are going to get more exciting in the 70s. I'm pretty much all Beatles through the 60s. I love the Beatles. I think they're the greatest band of all time, and they show why with this record. Fantastic swan song. Paul McCartney gets them all together, gets them to interact and be a band again. The songs are great. The performances are great. The production's great. The album cover's great. I love Abbey Road, and that's my number 1 pick of 69.
Jason, you got to watch your tongue, man. I mean, you can't make promises that you can't keep, because once you get into all their solo stuff and Wings, you might be breaking those promises.
Yeah, but I mean, you can. so I mean, I'm not saying I'm not going to pick their solo albums, but it'll be more exciting to see which ones I pick.
They were playing with different people, so it's slightly different at least. Okay, that's interesting. I kind of figured both of you would pick those two. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this was the year for In the Court of the Crimson King, which didn't make my list, but Prague and kind of that world was really kind of starting to pick up steam, especially kind of with that album. And that was just off my list. But there's too much for me to include it. I have my runners up. See, I got Led Zeppelin 1, I got Led Zeppelin 2, because I mean just ridiculous that they could put out both of those in one year. Some of my favorite albums of all time. Also on my list, we have Gilded Palace of Sin, my favorite probably country rock album of all time. I think a little bit better than Sweetheart of the Rodeo because it's a little bit more Graham Parsons. Sin City, one of my all-time favorites. Tracks, got to put Tommy by The Who on there, but like Jason, my number 1's going to be Abbey Road.
This is the 2nd win and 6th nomination of the Beatles by Joe.
My favorite Beatles album. It really could never be anything but that. So I'm glad we're done with the Beatles. We're done with maybe the Beach Boys for the most part, so maybe I can start picking some new albums once we finally get into the 70s. I'm very excited.
Still gotta Let It Be.
It's not going to make my list. I'm gonna spoiler alert. Let It Be is not on my top 5.
I thought maybe a glimmer of hope. I thought that we could share Tommy together.
It's another. I think I've had 3 Who albums now in my top 5, but they just can't get over the hump, and I'm not sure if they ever will. There's still 2 or 3 pretty significant albums, I think, by The Who in the 70s, so we'll see where that leads us. Anything else you want to add about 1969, final year of the 60s?
I would just say heading into the 70s, I think 70 to 74 is the best 5 years for my taste in music that ever happened consecutively, so it's going to get very, very difficult.
I would agree with Jason. 71 in particular looks absolutely impossible to organize. If you never heard another year of music and only could listen to stuff from 71, you can probably still be happy. It's going to be that good.
We are in for a treat, and so are our viewers once we finally get there. So, all right, for listography, I'm Joe, Jason, Kramzer, as we refer to him. Like the video, comment, subscribe, hit the bell. Which list did you like the best? Leave it in the comments. And stay tuned for 1970. It'll be coming next week sometime. And that's it.